You're listening to the Medic Materials Podcast, hosted by Mike Turk, Emily Yates, and Gerard Cuomo. All are current EMS providers and educators with a combined 30 years of EMS experience. Each month we discuss EMS news, medical science, and review actual EMS calls, offering many educational opportunities to the listener. Portions of the calls have been altered to protect the privacy and identity of all involved.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Medic Materials Podcast. It is March 1st and I am sitting here somewhat alone. We have Kelsey, resident EMT, and Emily, RN and EMT, but we are sadly still missing poor Gerardo. And we failed to fill his hot seat today. So it'll be the three of us going through this call review, and it's a significant one. It has a special place in my life. And it's not a call that I did per se. But I think it lends itself to what we're going to be talking a lot about this month. On the YouTube channel, we had posted a lot of videos in February about cardiology, and we just launched one with pacemakers to end the month. And I think this one will lend itself fitting in right with that video, as well as the overall discussion that we want to have this month, and that's RMAs, or refusal of medical attention orders. And it's something that we don't really talk about all that often. It's just kind of something that we're expected to do and that no one wants to do. It is one of those kind of things. So we're going to get started. Kelsey, you had some stuff that you wanted to talk about before we dive right into this.
So guys, every month now we're going to be doing a rig check before we get started with our call review or our discussion. So the first thing that's on our checklist is 10 minutes after this podcast airs, head over to the Facebook page or click the link below. There is going to be a post up on the Facebook page, and the question for today's post is, what do you think this patient's underlying problem is, and would you have let this patient initially RMA? So you can start putting in your opinion as you're listening, or even when you're done listening to the podcast, and we're really trying to get everybody's different views so everybody can have their part in the podcast. Also, we have an Instagram. It's a little rough. Mike's working.
I'm working on it. Okay, Instagram was developed well after I hit puberty, all right?
All right, old man.
He's working on Instagram to help people in, like, my age group. So follow us on our Instagram. It's the same as our Facebook, at Medic Materials EDU. You can see him struggle a little bit, but ultimately...
Don't even ask me what Snapchat is.
It's just entertaining, honestly. It's just entertainment.
But go follow it. Give it a like. It's got some great information on it. He'll get there.
I promise.
Any students or acting providers, if you have a topic that you want to discuss or a subject you want to learn about, feel free to message us at Medic Materials EDU on our Instagram or our Facebook, or feel free to email us at info@medicmaterials.com, and make sure to check out our YouTube page every Friday at 2:15. And most importantly, we also have some new merch, so now you're able to support us by purchasing our merch off Teespring. We have new stickers featuring the infamous donut and much more. Also, if you have a favorite podcast host, we are having t-shirts out there, and you can buy a t-shirt with their most well-known quote from me, Emily, Gerard, and Mike.
Eventually,
we're still trying to figure it out.
We're still trying to figure out what I say other than, so?
So if you have ideas for that, feel free to message us too.
Cool. All right.
So that's it.
Thank you. And I would suggest that we've run into a scenario here it's going to be a 2-call scenario, okay? And that is very important. And I have heavily edited the second portion of this call. So, and you'll see exactly why later. So the system that we're in is a very rural EMS district. You have one transporting ambulance staffed with 2 EMT basics. The system also has an ALS fly car system, which each fly car is staffed with 1 paramedic. Your local hospitals in this area, you have a general hospital 35 minutes away from this location, and you have a large urban cardiac medical center approximately 25 minutes away. The initial dispatch is a priority 4 or an alpha priority for those who use it to a residential home with a 32-year-old male syncopal episode. Initially, no medic is sent on dispatch. The time of this call, which is important, which is why I put it in, is approximately 5:30 p.m. or 17:30 for those in EMS. Are we okay with dispatch information being priority 4? That's the first thing I want to know.
So I think that a syncopal episode, and how I like to describe it to everybody, is there could be so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
Everything causes a syncopal episode, and nothing causes a syncopal episode.
Yeah.
But I think that you're already setting in these providers' minds that, well, this person is young. The syncopal episode means nothing. It's priority 4.
Right. 32. It can't be.
Right.
It can't be anything.
So these
Maybe
like,
they farted wrong and passed out.
Right. Maybe they're under. It's already setting this preconceived idea in their mind.
Yep. Okay. So the BLS ambulance arrives first, right? The medic was never dispatched initially. So the BLS ambulance arrives. They enter the home and they find this patient seated in the kitchen in the care and company of his wife. He appears from the door, alert and pale. So you're already thinking preconceived notions been set in from dispatch. With that information, he's sitting upright, he appears alert, notices you from across the room, but is significantly pale. Is there anything that you guys have kind of perk up in your mind? Any assessments that you want to do right away? Treatments that you want to do right away? Is there anything that you guys are thinking at that point in time at the door?
I don't know if it's just me, but we were always taught, like in EMT school, like, syncopal episodes are cardiac until proven otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So because it was priority 4 and that medic wasn't dispatched, I don't know how long it's going to take for them to get there. So I might call them ahead and be like, hey, can you start heading over? Like, might need you. If anything, you can turn them around.
I like that. I think that's prudent in this situation. I typically, as a paramedic, every syncopal episode that I ever do goes ALS. I don't care if it went for 5 seconds or 5 minutes. People don't pass out for no reason. Whether it's cardiac or not, it should be an ALS call. That's just my personal opinion. People know. That's just the way I'm going to do it. So the EMTs, they approach the patient and they do their initial assessment. The primary EMT finds this patient to be alert and oriented ×4. Airway is clear. It's patent. He appears breathing with unlabored respirations. There's no obvious trauma anywhere. Peripheral pulses are present and within normal range for speed and stuff like that. And skin, again, is pale and somewhat clammy. Does this presentation worry you to something or worry you to nothing? Maybe it's like, meh, okay, he appears okay, other than being pale and a little bit clammy.
I mean, I think that's huge, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that that's a huge point. Like, to me, yes, you're consciously oriented and breathing, but you don't look good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that.
Plus, you just passed out. Like,
right. Okay. So what do you guys want to get next? Where do you want to go from here if you're the ones on the scene getting this information? Do you want information or do you want assessment?
All.
You want it all.
one person start asking questions,
I want
the other
everything.
person start taking
Why are
vital
you limiting
signs.
me?
Okay. So it's almost like you read this beforehand. That's exactly what these providers do. The primary EMT steps into the assessment role, and the secondary EMT starts to get the story. Primary EMT gets vital signs, manual BP, 136 over 72. Heart rate is 82 and regular. Respiratory rate is 20 and unlabored. And NO2 saturation, SpO2 is 97% on room air. They even get a BG, blood glucose, of 127. This one was on top of things, right? Well done. And the second provider, that secondary EMT, is asking what the heck was the leading story to get us here, right? And the patient tells EMS that him and his wife were enjoying a night in. Dinner, drinks, movie, that kind of night. They were watching the movie. He had to go pee. So he decided he's going to go upstairs. And while urinating, he felt faint and then blacked out. He said he was only out for a short time, but after regaining consciousness, he walked downstairs and waited for EMS because he learned his wife had called. And he states he's fine, he feels fine, all is well. Thank you for your service, toodaloo. For you guys, with this information, do you believe him first? Are you inclined to believe this character, this patient?
Believe him with what?
Believe his story. Like, do you believe that is the only thing that happened? Or do you believe that, like, if I heard this story, I'd be like, there's holes in this. Like, I want to know, this is like Swiss cheese. I need to make it cheddar. Like, there's too many holes in here that I need to fill. At least for me.
I mean, okay. I'm not seeing it as much as Swiss. Like, why wouldn't you believe that?
It's not saying I wouldn't believe it, but there's details in here that I'm like.
I mean, I think I would ask more questions.
That's what I'm looking.
Like, I believe it.
I don't think I wouldn't believe him. I think I need more information.
I mean, I would ask more.
What I'm
yeah, I would ask more questions. I wouldn't just be like, you tell me that story and you're like, okay, goodbye. Like, no.
Right.
Sit down. Let's talk.
Right.
How long were you there for? Did you hit your head?
Right. Yes.
I mean, how did you feel getting off the couch and walking to the bathroom? You said you felt faint when you were peeing and like then passed out. But what about before that? What were you doing? Mm-hmm. What'd you have for food? How many drinks?
I like it. Okay. So the EMTs agree that there's not enough information here. They're following your guys' following your guys' beliefs. These EMTs are on point, right? And they start asking the patient further questions, right? They ask, how many drinks have you had that night? And the patient admits to having 4 alcoholic beverages, which really isn't out of the norm for him on a night where he's hanging out with his wife. Whatever, who
you're
cares?
Of age.
Right? Right. And he kind of then deflects, where then the wife steps in and goes, all right, let me tell you really what happened.
Love the wife in this situation.
Love the wife, right? Love the wife. And she then tells these providers she was downstairs when she heard a loud crash. She went upstairs to investigate and found her husband laying in the bathtub with his legs over the tub edge. Okay? So this is kind of one of those like, stand-in tubs. You got the edge, you got the plastic wall. He is laying with his head against the plastic wall in the tub, legs almost touching the floor on the outside.
Ow.
Right. Looks like he fell straight backwards into the tub from a standing position, right? So now we have to think possibly trauma, right?
Some injury.
So he's laying in the bathroom with these in the tub. And when she finds him, he's unconscious, unresponsive. Feels a radial pulse and finds it to be faint and irregular. She then proceeded to get a fair bit worried, and she felt that she may actually have the need to begin CPR. She didn't, but she feels the need. So this is when she ran downstairs, grabs her phone, calls 911, returns upstairs while she's on the phone with 911. While she's on the phone talking, her husband starts to become a little bit more responsive. He is responsive to voice. He's extremely lethargic, very confused, barely can keep his eyes open, is mumbling gibberish. Wife's still on the phone, and then he becomes unresponsive again. This lasted for maybe a minute or so that he had the change in responsiveness back to being unresponsive.
So would that technically count as 2 syncopal episodes? How does that work?
Tomato.
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Who cares? It is kind of like, who cares? It's a significant change in responsiveness. Right. I wouldn't call it a syncopal episode because the initial blackout was the syncopal episode. This is just a change from being unresponsive to being responsive to voice back to being unresponsive.
Right.
Like, it's not really another syncopal episode. It's just change in mental status. So she feels his pulse again and feels a beat and a long pause, and then a beat and then another long pause. And approximately 1 to 2 minutes later, he regains consciousness. He is disoriented.
Wait, so we're bradycardic? Like a beat and then a pause and then a beat and then a pause?
Correct.
Okay.
That's at least what we have to.
Okay.
Looking from the outside, yes, we would assume that this gentleman is bradycardic, right? After like 1 to 2 minutes, he regains consciousness. He's disoriented, but he's able to stand with help and speak to her. Over the next minute, he becomes fully alert, oriented, and walks downstairs to the kitchen.
Still looking like shit.
Looking like shit to await EMS arrival.
How did he feel like standing up, walking downstairs?
Initially, when he stood up, the wife he had reported to the wife that he was very unsteady, kind of wobbly, but once he was able to get down the stairs, there was no issue walking, standing, moving around. So,
I don't like it.
So you don't like it.
I don't like it.
Hearing this information, what exactly are you guys thinking? What has changed in your thinking? Like, you didn't like him from the beginning.
I mean, I didn't like the way he looked from the beginning.
Okay.
But I like it even less now.
Do you feel like this was to me a serious event?
Yeah,
this wasn't
definitely.
just like, oh yeah, he passed out because he was drinking or whatever. Like,
Right.
yeah, like this was a significant syncopal event,
I agree.
right? Is there anything that you guys want to do now that hasn't been done? Not with story, but like treatment or assessment or other operational type things.
Did they call for ALS yet?
They have not.
I definitely would now then.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds cardiac.
Cardiac.
Absolutely sounds cardiac, right? So the primary EMT does exactly that, Kelsey. He decides, I'm going to go outside. I'm going to radio for a paramedic to
him.
respond to the scene. These guys were on point. I have to say, these guys were on point. Meanwhile, the secondary EMT goes in and calls for the paramedic. The primary EMT stays inside and obtains the second set of vitals. Manual BP 130/70, heart rate 76 regular, respiratory rate 20 unlabored, SpO2 remains 98%. He's still alert and oriented ×4. They do a stroke exam and find no weakness, no slurred speech, nothing that would trigger them to be thinking, hey, this might be a CVA or stroke of some sort. So really, nothing's changed. Heart rate's still about the same. Respiratory rate's the same. Blood pressure's the same. Everything seems to be okay. The primary EMT goes down into gathering medical history. And they say, okay, they find out he's got acid reflux, treated with a daily omeprazole, 20 over the counter, no big deal.
Probably didn't cause a syncopal episode.
Probably not.
Probably didn't cause the syncopal. I would agree with that. No allergies, no other meds. And they dig a little deeper and they find out that he has had a few syncopal episodes over the course of a 15-year period, all of which were never found to have a diagnosed cause. Okay. Is that added information anything?
How many syncopal episodes are we talking? Like 1 over the past 15 years or like 35 over the past 15 years? Because there's a big difference.
7.
Still concerning, but not
Still concerning.
35 concerning.
But, this is like, 1 every 2 years kind of thing if you space them out, right? Who knows if that's how they happen, but...
Yeah, but if it's cardiac, like, what's the cause of it? If it's cardiac related and this has been going on for 15 years... At what point does your heart say, like, fuck you, I'm done? And really, like...
And then the wife is doing CPR.
I mean, what's the
Seriously.
difference between a syncopal episode and unresponsive? Like, you come back.
Yep.
So, like, that's even more concerning to me.
And then the wife is
And
doing
the-
CPR in the bathtub.
Yeah, honestly.
And the fact that, this gentleman said, I'm 32 years old. This started when I was, a teenager, mid-teens,
Right.
14, 15 years old. And nothing's been diagnosed, which either means the doctors have never taken it seriously, or he maybe never went.
Well, and I mean, a 14-year-old has a syncopal episode. Not many people are going to take that seriously.
Right. But should we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Every syncopal episode we should.
Because then they'll be 32 in the bathtub unresponsive.
I agree.
Well, and next time, what happens when he's at the top of the stairs and now he falls down the stairs? And that syncopal episode is the least of his worries right now.
Yep. Yeah, I would 100% agree. So we're treating this as definitely, like in my mind, definitely needs to go get checked out.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
100%.
And you guys, as Kelsey said in the beginning, you guys can put your opinion on the Facebook page right now. So go there, use that link. Tell us what you're thinking as we're doing this episode.
What are we missing?
What are we missing,
There's
right?
something, I promise.
There's probably more than one something.
So about 7 minutes after being requested, the fly car medic arrives on scene.
7 minutes?
7 minutes.
Go him.
Yeah, right? Even for rural EMS,
I know.
that's pretty awesome. The primary EMT gives a full rundown of what's been going on, what's been found out, and the medic decides immediate 3-lead ECG.
Why 3? That's a legitimate question.
So a 4-lead is really a 3-lead. Yeah, I'll explain it later. So the way, okay, so we all say 4-lead EKG because there's 4 leads, right?
Yeah.
You only need 3.
But technically,
It's a
you only
3-lead.
need 3. When you're actually looking at it, you have augmented leads that they make from that 4th lead.
Got it.
So don't worry. You remember that big orange book that I gave you for EKGs?
Have it. You gave it to Justin.
That was dumb.
Oh, that was dumb.
Justin, I want it back if you're listening.
Okay, well, I will get it back, and I will give it to you, and you can start reading it.
I have one that's
Best
not as
EKG
big,
book
and
ever.
it's a really good EKG book.
Yeah, this one's full of pictures. It's great. Great for people like me. Just saying. So with that tangent successfully fulfilled, and you have just plugged your own So I Got a Question t-shirt.
Oh, definitely. I'm sure there'll be more.
The medic obtains the 3-lead or 4-lead, whatever you want to call it, EKG, and the initial rhythm is normal sinus with a rate in the 70s.
So I was just going to say this. They called the medic, which I absolutely would have done, but I'm not anticipating that 12-lead to look any differently because I think whatever happened is past.
Done.
Yeah, it's over.
Right. So I think that you're far enough out of it too that like I don't anticipate you to have any EKG, a young healthy person who has a syncopal episode that has resolved and now is not complaining of anything. Like, does he look better? Is he less pale? Not diaphoretic? You know what I mean? I wouldn't anticipate that to be different, but don't let that guide. Like, this person still needs to go to the hospital. They still need a cardiac workup. Just because their 12 leads normal doesn't mean that they're fine.
Right. I 100%
Not even
agree.
a 12 lead. It's your 3s.
Yeah.
Like a 3
And
versus
that's
a
it.
fork.
But this paramedic does the due diligence, obtains the 12 lead. Again, like you predicted, sinus rhythm, no ST elevations or depressions, no blocks, no abnormalities. You're still thinking absolutely needs to get transported, needs a cardiac workup. I'm with you. I would spend 3 hours here trying to sit there and be like, you
agree.
need to do something.
So,
I mean, I'm like ruthless with this. I'll pull the family in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you want to be a widow? Talk to your husband, make him go. Like, I am ruthless.
So, would you consider this different if you didn't know that the wife was like, counted the pulse was like beat, really long pause, beat. If they passed out, they woke up a minute and a half later.
Oh.
You don't know the difference, like
You know
what
what?
happened in between.
What my deciding factor on this was how he looked when you walked in. Young, healthy people are not pale and diaphoretic for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
That's a perfusion problem. I don't like that.
Yeah. And I'm with you.
Even if you pass out for something else, if you pass out from alcohol, I mean, how many people get drunk and pass out? You're not pale and diaphoretic from that.
Yeah. You're less tired in the morning when
Yes,
you wake up.
100%.
But you're usually not pale and diaphoretic. And that's it. Like looking at the other signs, like you're looking at perfusion issues,
Exactly.
not only taking the information from the wife, even if it was not there, hearing his initial story of I went up, I peed, I blacked out, I woke up, I was kind of disoriented, but I made my way downstairs, but I still look like shit, but I feel fine. There's a reason that you looked like shit.
Right, exactly.
Like, people don't pass out for no reason. Syncopal episodes, like you said, are typically cardiac in nature. Even if this paramedic is thinking, oh, well, maybe they just vasovagaled.
Or maybe it's that orthostatic hypotension. You know, you change position, you pass out. Like, that happens so frequently.
Right.
But you still don't get pale and diaphoretic from that.
Right. Unless you
have
lose,
a perfusion issue.
Right. Unless you lose all perfusion.
Exactly.
Right. There's still a perfusion issue.
Because think about, why are you pale and diaphoretic? Your skin is not getting perfused. That is so late down the road there.
Yeah. Your sympathetics kicked in.
Yeah.
It's saying, hey, we don't need the skin. Right. We're shunting. So something significant had to happen. And at this point in time, the color is starting to come back. They're starting to look more pink. They're less clammy, but they're still not perfect. Still not perfect. They feel perfect. The medic again asks very deliberately, what hospital are we going to?
Doesn't even give him the option.
Doesn't even give him that. This patient goes, you guys can have a good night. I'm not going anywhere. And says he feels fine. He feels back to normal. And ultimately, these providers and this patient have a short discussion with this patient. And they sign this patient off with an RMA, a refusal, and EMS leaves. All within the range of like 45 minutes. Patient contact time. So at this table, I don't think any of us are okay with this decision.
No.
But again,
but it's theirs to make, and I will fight that till the death. Like, I will support your decision, whatever it is. My job is to educate you and scare the bejesus out of you to try and get you to go. But at the end of the day,
we're not in the business of kidnapping.
How many times do I say that a shift?
A million.
But it's true.
And I love the fact that you can make whatever dumb decision you want to make because that's your choice.
Viva la America.
I want to make my decision when it comes to my healthcare, so I will defend that to a T. However, I'm also not against scaring the shit out of people to try and get them to go. Like I said, like, I would have called a doc. I would have let the doc try and scare them.
Yep. And
Miss, you almost started CPR. Would you like to next time? Like,
do you like being a widow?
Yeah, if I was the medic on this call, when I'm getting back in my truck, I'm feeling bad.
Yeah.
Like,
I totally, like, I'm going to be there again.
I totally feel like I failed. Like, oh yeah, I'm going back there sometime tonight.
But not even like you're going back there because, like, whatever. Right. I'm here for the shift. I can go wherever the fuck I want.
I really hope he doesn't code in the next hour. You know?
Exactly.
Like, I have that impending cloud over my head the rest of the shift. Whether it be 10 minutes or 12 hours, I have that impending.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. So let's transition into our second call. Okay. We're going to transition into the second call, and you guys need to remember all of the details from the first call. So if you need something, time out.
Go to the Facebook page and be our fourth person hot seat and talk about what you would have done to try and get this person to not RMA.
Oh, give me your ruthless techniques, guys. I'm running out.
Yeah.
Honestly, I need some more.
You need something besides, do you want to be a widow?
You want to die?
Yeah, that one's getting old.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I'm aware.
We need new ones.
People are not as afraid of that as they used to be.
That's true. They're like, whatever.
Slightly disconcerting.
So with that, if you guys need any information from the first call, just let me know. We'll go back. We'll review. Okay. So this second call happens in the exact same EMS system. One BLS transporting ambulance, one ALS fly car. Same hospitals, General Hospital, 35 minutes away. Large urban medical center, 25 minutes away. The time now is 2 a.m. So we're approximately 8 hours later in shift. Okay. And these guys are dispatched, priority 1, Delta priority, for a 32-year-old male, unresponsive.
Oh, wow. Weird
Weird
how that happened.
Right? Almost like we thought of it.
So
at least he made it till 2 a.m.
So to you guys, something seems familiar. I will say this is going to be the same exact 32-year-old that we just discussed.
Is it the
Fancy
same
that.
crew or a different crew?
However, because it's 8 hours later, the BLS crew and the paramedic responding are all different.
As is the dispatch, though.
As is
Night and day from the dispatch.
As is the dispatch. And here's the other big red flag to me is that no current provider responding to this call is aware of the happenings that happened on the previous day shift. Because there was no communication at the end of the shift like, hey, I did this really weird bonkers RMA today. You probably are going to go back. Here's the story. None of that. I like to do that to
I was just going to
incoming
say,
crews.
for the record,
Like-
if you're leaving the scene and you have that, oh, fuck, I don't like this situation, tell your relief.
Yeah, please do.
Tell your relief because your inkling is probably correct. And
Yeah.
at some point, you will be back.
Yeah.
Someone will be back.
Someone
Whether it's
will be
you or
back.
somebody else.
Yep.
I've had this conversation handing off to you a million times.
Yep. Oh, yeah. And it's one of the, especially in like the fly car system.
Yeah.
Because me working in it, I can sit there and be like, yeah, I went to this place. And they're like, oh, yeah, I'm aware. And then I get information for the next time I go back because I don't get a lot of time with the BLS crews when I'm in a flight. Like I'm by myself. I rely on the paramedics that relieve me or I relieve. And that's really it. So with this call, EMS arrives together. Cool. BLS, ALS, they arrive at the same time. They're shown inside by the wife, and they're walked upstairs to where they find the male patient, semi-responsive, guess where?
In the bathtub?
Floor of the bathroom. Almost.
Maybe you should stop peeing.
Seriously,
I
like
feel like
maybe
that's
this
the
guy
issue.
should just get a Foley.
Honestly, like Christ.
Get a Foley, get a poop bag. Like it'll be perfect. 32 years old. Why not?
Fecal management system.
You know, whatever.
She's got to make it sound pretty.
Yeah, no, it's not. So seeing this gentleman semi-responsive on the bathroom floor, the paramedic immediately steps in, beginning assessing this patient. Finds this male to be responsive to loud voices only. Yells at this patient, opens their eyes a little, and then immediately shuts them. Cool. Airway still clear, no fluid, no vomit. Breathing is shallow but unlabored, and appears there's no trauma, but the skin feels hot to the touch. We both went, My next question, so what's going through your heads? I even wrote it down.
I feel like because that's a totally different presentation, I mean, skin-wise, than he was before. But, I mean, they wouldn't know that, I guess.
They wouldn't know that.
But in my mind, I'm thinking of what would make that drastic change.
What she said.
Okay. I like it. So the medic takes full control of the scene and instructs one EMT to gather vital signs and the other EMT to get information from the wife.
This poor wife.
What the heck happened, right? What the hell happened? So vital signs, the EMT, rather than doing a manual, gets a auto cuff, NIBP cuff. It comes back as 86/43. Heart rate is 57 via the SpO2 probe, and the SpO2 itself is reading 87%. Respiratory rate is 24 in shallow, and they even do a blood glucose, comes back as 151.
So, besides the blood glucose, that set of vitals alone is slightly disconcerting for a 32-year-old, relatively. I mean, at this point, I'm hoping they're getting past medical history knowing he's perfectly healthy. So that alone is disconcerting. And especially if the wife, I'm assuming, she seems pretty competent enough to be like, oh, you guys were already here today. And knowing that, I feel like that's even more disconcerting to that crew to be like, okay, what's actually going on right now?
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially like I'd walk in being like 32, why unless you're
Right.
like the size of my wife, where you're 94
twig.
pounds soaking wet and your blood pressure's normally like 94 over something and you're at 86, I'd be like, okay, drink some water. Be fine, you know? But not for an adult male that's 32 that's not 94
94
pounds, right? So the wife informs EMS that her husband, again, went to the bathroom after getting up from sleeping.
Stop peeing.
Stop peeing, right? She heard another loud crash and found him unresponsive on the floor. She immediately called 911, felt his pulse again, and found it to be slow but present. Now, she puts in another loud crash. Again, past tense words that are supposedly cluing into these providers that maybe this has happened before, right? Because again, they're still unaware that there's been a crew that was here 8 hours ago.
This is the second time in 24 hours this has happened.
Because the wife did not tell them on arrival, like, hey, thanks for coming again.
Well, and in all fairness, like, who would? When she's calling 911 again, like, she's going to assume that they know because she did the same process. She knows. It's out of her mind. She's worried about other things right now.
And that's it.
I feel like even if they didn't know that it was twice, it makes you more concerned that it was twice in the past 24 hours. But even if it wasn't, those vital signs alone, how she's saying, you're at the same disconcern we were the first time around.
Yep.
I was going to say, it doesn't matter that it happened twice. I mean, like, it's a good piece of information to know. But right
still,
now,
it doesn't
how
change the process.
Exactly. It doesn't change my thought process right now.
Yep.
I mean, I thought this the first time that he should have gone.
And now his vital signs are that much
or even
worse.
worse. And now he's not totally responsive. Now he doesn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Just hope he doesn't wake up. JK.
That might be kidnapping.
No, implied consent.
Yeah, implied consent.
I'm sure the wife is telling you to let him go, too.
Probably. She seems, like you said, a sharp lady.
And she got threatened as a widow earlier. So.
Yeah.
Now it's really hitting home.
EMTs decide 87% isn't really all that great for an SpO2. They apply oxygen via non-rebreather mask and place it at 10 liters per minute. The medic decides 4-lead EKG, 3-lead EKG, whatever you want to call it.
Like a fork versus a threek. They do the same thing, but one sounds wrong.
That's right. Initial rhythm shows sinus bradycardia, right? Rate is in the 50s. The medic then decides he's not going to wait, places a successful IV, 18 gauge in left AC, hangs 1,000 milliliter bag of normal saline, starts that infusion.
Woo.
The secondary EMT, at this time, while all these treatment things are going on within the bathroom, decides we need to extricate this patient based on implied consent. They're going. Goes down to the rig, gets the Reeves, and comes back upstairs. They place the patient on the Reeves, get him down the stairs, outside. They place him on the stretcher. As they're moving the stretcher across the driveway, we have a mental status change. He starts becoming a bit more responsive.
Damn it, you got to move faster.
He's awesome. Get him in the ambulance and go.
He opens up his eyes and
Now
asks, what the heck is going on? And over the next 5 or so minutes, he returns to being completely, fully alert and oriented times 4. He's able to answer all questions. He's able to respond clearly, but it takes him a little bit longer to do, takes that 5 minutes for him to come out of what the hell is going on to I understand what's going on kind of thing. So is there any information that you guys absolutely need to know at this point in time now that he's awake? And what do you think is going on with this patient? Knowing what we know, not so much what this crew knows. We know that he did this 8 hours ago.
Right.
I want his account of what he thinks happened.
Okay.
Did he get lightheaded before? Did he just go boom, like...
Boom, boom.
I don't, honestly, at this point, I'm not even sure I would believe that he would tell me the truth. So, like, I think he would tell me the right story, but is he going to, like, water it down because he doesn't want to go?
The EMS crew begins transport. Paramedic and primary EMT are in the back of the rig. Vitals at this point are retaken. NIBP cuff is used again, spits out 116/73. Significant improvement, right? From 86/40.
But he also had an improvement in mental status,
Yes,
so it makes sense.
Okay. Heart rate, 76, sinus rhythm with the occasional PVC, or premature ventricular contraction. Respiratory rate is 18 and unlabored. SpO2 is 100%, still on the non-rebreather oxygen. The medic then decides, I'm going to do my first 12 lead. I
Wait,
personally
what was his
would have
pulse
done
rate?
that
Earlier.
earlier. But this paramedic decides, I'm going to do my first 12 lead, show sinus rhythm, no ST elevations.
I was going to say, again, I feel like we missed the ball on that
You
because
missed-
whatever
you missed
happened
the mark
is past.
is over, right? And the medic decides, I want to see what he's on, room air, so pulls the oxygen off of him.
I'm going to say that.
And
And
the
probably
rest-
doesn't need a non-rebreather.
Yep, the room air sat remains above 96%. So
Good to go.
good to go. Was that your question? That
No, what was the pulse rate? I zoned out.
76. With the occasional irregular beat, irregular PVC. Nothing to write home about. However, should a 32-year-old be having PVCs?
How much coffee do you drink? How many energy drinks?
Well, and that's
I mean,
it.
I
There's
guess
so many
yeah.
things that cause PVCs.
But that is also something different from the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Like he wasn't throwing ectopic beats
right.
in the beginning. So
But again, these guys don't know that.
right.
But it's really good to be thinking the differences between the two presentations, because really these are two very drastically different presentations, right? So the medic attempts to gather more information. He begins asking a whole slew of questions, and the patient informs the medic that he went to the bathroom, and while seated, he began to feel extremely sleepy. And he began to literally nod out, and then woke up outside on the stretcher. Doesn't remember anything from the time he became really sleepy to the time he woke up.
Doesn't even remember. Like,
I mean,
the
that's a
shouting at him.
significant amount of time.
That is a significant amount
That's
of time.
much longer than the first time.
Yep. Yes, it is.
Did they ever find out that he RMA'd earlier? Wife ever bring it up? Patient ever bring it up?
We shall get there. Okay. He also reports to the medic that something similar did happen earlier in the evening.
And now I believe everything he says because he owned it.
He owned it. He finally was like, yeah.
By the way.
Oh, by the way, sorry. I fucked up earlier too. Whatever. So the transport continued, and approximately 6 minutes goes by. The medic is sitting there doing their due diligence, and he looks up at the medic and he tells him he's beginning to feel extremely tired again. And same feeling, extremely tired. And about 20 seconds after that statement, he's again unconscious, unresponsive on the cot.
12 lead. That's the first button I'm pushing.
Okay.
I'd want to know.
So the medic has the same kind of like, let me look over there. Looks at the monitor and notices a significant rhythm change during those 20 seconds. Do you want to guess what it is? Just
Squiggly lines.
Idioventricular.
Oh, I like that. I like it. Maybe.
Probably not.
on the monitor, this medic sees a heart rate drop. Okay, and as I say these numbers, there is no like, oh hey, it's dropping by like 1 beat per thing until it gets there. It's like, no, it's this and now it's this. Nothing in between. So keep that in mind. Okay, so the heart rate drops from 70 to 62, 62 to 55, 55 to 40.
It's going the wrong way.
40 to 32, 32 to 20, 20 to a 6-second pause of nothing.
Ooh.
Oh, God.
And then a PJC. Now, PJC is a premature junctional contraction.
It's your heart's last-ditch effort.
Right. Now, remember.
Please help.
Right. And that's it. Like, remember
ACLS?
when you just took it. So for those that, need the brushing up on pacemakers of the heart, right? You have internal pacemakers of the heart. You have your AV or your SA node, your regular pacemaker, 60 to 100. If that fails, it goes to the AV node or the junctional node. And that pace is like 40 to 60. And then if that fails, it goes down to the Purkinje fibers and they pace at like 20 to 40. And if that fails, well, then you're just dead. But here, you're actually seeing one fail and one try and take over. Like it's trying to do
you can
what
watch it go down the conduction system.
This is really cool just to see. It really sucks for the patient, but it's really cool to see. Just saying.
The provider's like, ooh.
So remember, 20 beats a 20 to a 6-second pause of nothing, like that. Then a PJC, a singular PJC, and then an 8-second pause of nothing. One singular PJC, another 6-second pause of nothing.
Did they think to start CPR?
I was going to say, we're like 20 seconds into 2 beats.
Yep.
Non-perfusing beats.
Okay. And then...
I'd want to start CPR.
Okay. And then you see 3 sets of PJC couplets. So that's just
How we're going.
2 junctional beats put together in succession. Then a little bit of space, 2 beats, a little bit of space, 2 beats. And the rate begins to increase again back into the 20s, then into the 40s, then into the 60s, and then again it's sinus rhythm with a PVC here and there. So you have this 20-second event that this medic is watching and going, "Oh shit, I should probably start CPR." Records it on the monitor.
I was going to say, I almost
gets into the position to start CPR, and then it's
comes
over.
back.
That man's sternum was lucky.
Seriously. Like, seriously lucky. So I'm assuming that everyone at this table, if that was your patient, would be significantly concerned with that. Like, what are we dealing with here? Like, that there's no blocks, there's no nothing.
Young, healthy.
Serious bradycardia.
But you see, like, and he's just laying there. Like, there's, it takes vasovagal out of the loop.
Right.
It takes, like, orthostatic hypotension out of the
Gone.
ball game.
He's
laying there.
You know for a fact it's strictly your heart now.
Right.
Your heart is the sole cause of this.
Yeah. This is a cardiac problem. 32-year-olds don't have cardiac problems, I was told.
I'm disease.
Yes.
Right? But we really need to have that conversation in that, yes, they do, and we need to take these calls seriously. Like, how many providers do we know that would have looked at this, not this specific call, but the first one,
Oh, yeah.
and been like, he was out for a minute or so, BLS, and then gone back in
100%.
service. Right?
Too many.
Way too many. So after the sinus rhythm comes back, he begins to regain consciousness, and the transport's continued without really any further events or issues. He's dropped off at the hospital.
I feel like that was enough.
And the crew returned in service. No other treatments were given. No other, assessments were really performed by the paramedic. They just go, okay, like, drop
How
off.
long
Here
was
you go.
he out for?
Here's the story. The 20 to 30 seconds. And then once his rhythm came back, he started to come right back to consciousness. I'm really glad that this guy went and got taken care of in that particular, instance. But it is really like listening to the show and the call review. It's like, okay, what the hell actually caused it? Because I just can't look at the beginning presentation and the second presentation and be like, it's the same patient.
Right. They're very different.
They're very different, right? But the syncopal episodes and the way they respond out of the syncopal episodes are kind of the same, right? So remember when I said that I heavily edited the second call?
So I have a question.
Okay.
So
Hold yourself.
hospitally.
Hospitally.
Well, you say
Hospitally.
you say pre-hospitally.
Hospitally.
Hospitally. Sure.
In the hospital. If he didn't RMA the first time and they brought him up, would they have found anything? Think?
Oh, who knows?
Or
I
do you
mean-
think it would have been the same as his 7 other syncopal episodes the past 15 years that he's had
I think
them?
if he didn't have a syncopal episode in the hospital, they wouldn't have found jack shit on it.
Yeah. Because who knows what blood work would have shown. I doubt that there was enough.
I mean,
there,
unless
I
there's
doubt
a
there was
root-
cardiac injury that like a
Right,
trope
like,
was.
yeah,
like a troponin was elevated
For a
or
20
something.
second, even for a 5-minute, like hypoperfusion, probably not going to elevate your trope that much. But
Yeah.
unless they could find like a root cause, like, oh yeah, by the way, you have Lyme disease,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to find any of that.
Yeah.
So he was almost kind of lucky that the second time it was witnessed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that he didn't walk out with a head injury.
Also
No.
true.
Who the heck knows how much trauma he had?
Because that bathtub is goddamn dangerous.
Seriously. So moving on to bring all of this together and why I wanted to review these. And like I said, foreshadowing, I really altered the second scenario. And why I did that is because and you guys know this, we've all been playing the ruse here. This was me to get my pacemaker. Okay. And I want to talk about this because I did that video on pacemakers. We don't talk about it all that much. And the circumstances around these instances present very interesting conversations. The first, the 32-year-old that has a syncopal episode. Now, the first portion of this call, that first 5 p.m. at night where I have the syncopal episode and land in the bathtub after peeing, that is 100% legit. My wife, Jess, who you all know is medically trained, comes in and goes, I'm probably going to have to start CPR on this guy because I barely feel a pulse. She calls 911, comes in, and I regain a little bit of my brain power, and then I black out again.
Poor Jess.
Poor Jess.
Honestly.
And I maintain a pulse. I'm able to get up. I go downstairs. Now, when I was downstairs, I legit felt fine. I was kind of groggy walking down the stairs. I won't lie about that. But I literally felt completely fine being downstairs. I was pale as shit. And everyone knows I'm white as fuck anyway. And then you look at me and you're like, wow, he's really white. There's something wrong. So I was pale as a ghost, and
You were still the idiot that Ara made.
And I was still the idiot that Ara made. Now, here's the first bit of the RMA that I want to talk about, right? So the call is significant in that here's a 32-year-old that I've had 6 or 7, somewhere around there. I forget. I think this one that we're talking about that day was my 7th syncopal episode since I was 14 years old. All of them are different. Every single time that I've passed out has been under different circumstances. It's never been like I've been peeing every single time. Every single one was completely different. And nobody ever sat there and was like, hey, you're a cardiac patient or you're a diabetic patient. Or like they just were like, meh, we didn't find a cause. Carry on with your life. Right?
Hope it doesn't happen again.
Hope it doesn't happen again. Right? So that's the first clue that listeners really need to take it seriously in syncopal episodes. Even, if a 15-year-old goes down and says, yeah, man, I passed out, there's a reason. There's a reason why I say that every syncopal episode, 5 seconds, 5 minutes needs to be ALS. Whether or not you do anything, you put them on the monitor, you put them on the 12 lead, you look at nothing, and you just make sure it doesn't happen again, that's okay by me. As Mark would say, it's ALS light. It's a nice, easy chart. Don't sit there and be like, oh.
I'm not going to do anything,
BLS.
so I'm just going to send this with the EMTs.
Yeah.
Until they're unresponsive in the back of your ambulance again.
Right. And then you look like a fool, right? Because it happens. Don't underestimate that people can have cardiac issues at early ages.
Yeah.
I got my pacemaker at 33 years old. And when I was in with my cardiologist, I was nervous being so young. And he's like, you're not young. I was like, what do you mean? Like,
Yeah,
all
Grandpa.
the pacemaker patients I take care of
Are
like
80?
80. I'm 33 freaking years old. He's like, yeah, my youngest one is like 14. I was like, okay, that makes me feel better.
I bet your doc knows how to use Instagram.
Probably. It is what it is.
He's working on it, guys.
So the other thing that is a very interesting circumstance with this is that here I am, a medical provider pre-hospitally, my wife, medical provider pre-hospitally, talking with 3 medical providers pre-hospitally, 2 of which are personal friends of mine that show up on this call.
That's why they did so good.
Should they have actually let me RMA?
I mean,
is
if they
this-
were your friends, they really could have pulled the "Just Do You Want to Be a Widow"
They
card.
could have whacked me
First
again,
of all-
whacked me over the head.
if I had showed up on scene and seen a friend of mine looking like that, and then his wife, who's a badass like Jess is, not only would I be like, oh fuck, don't screw this up, but like, there's no fucking way that I'm letting you sign off because that's on me.
Yep. And
Yeah,
this is,
then you just feel like crap about it for the rest of
that's
forever.
it, right?
But at the same time, like with your wife, especially if these are your friends, so they know the medical capabilities in this house.
Right.
They know that you're going to be taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
So, I can see this
point.
one way. Right. I
Again,
can see this
what
going one way
happens
or
if
another.
I fall down the stairs?
And what happens if Jess is sleeping since you
Right.
decided to do this when you were awake
Mm-hmm.
or in the middle of the night when you went up to pee?
Yep.
Yeah, I
see
don't know.
both
I can see
sides. You're
both
not
sides. Yeah.
32-year-old male bachelor who's just living large, and
that's it.
if you fall down, nobody's gonna see you.
Right. They find me unresponsive and dead 3 days later.
Right.
I
mean, what happens if it happens in your sleep and you don't come back from it? And now.
Yep. And that's why I want to talk about the second portion. And that's why I said I heavily edited the second portion, because I literally had to make most, if not all of that up.
Sorry, guys, he lied.
But I wanted to do it for educational purposes, because the second time was, so the first time after I had my syncopal episode, I RMA'd, I had a cardiologist appointment the next, 2 days later, and Jess went with me. And I had been seen for my PVCs and my palpitations and stuff like that previously, but nothing for this for almost an 8-year period. I had gone with no syncopal episodes. So the cardiologist was like, it could be this, he probably just vasovagaled out while he was peeing. It does happen to men who, whatever. And she's like, no. Okay, this is who I am, and this is what I do, and you're going to listen and take things seriously.
Good.
And she was like, listen, when I felt his pulse, it was like faint beat,
Flatline.
nothing, faint beat, nothing. There was something going on. So he believed her, and I got a loop monitor. Loop monitors are little, they're literally the size of a AAA battery. They're about half the thickness. And it was implanted just over my heart. So it literally takes the electrical activity of my heart if it meets the parameters of what the doctor sets it. So the loop monitor was uploaded every night at 4 o'clock in the morning to my base station. And then it would trigger if I had a heart rate less than 20 or any type of, VTAC or AFibs or anything erratic that it was oh, I don't like that. Any SVTs, anything like that. Or if I was bradycardic under 20.
It's a low limit.
It's a very low limit, right?
Wow.
And the doc was like, you should still, even if you're bradycardic, you're not going to be, passed out, loss of consciousness if it's in the 40s or even the high 30s. He was thinking I was going down if it was 20 or under kind of thing. So I had the loop for a year and 3 months. And that's why I make these calls 8 hours apart, but it was really a year and 3 months. And the story with the second call was I went out fishing, and after fishing, I had come home, and by the end of the night felt run down. And I ended up getting a spontaneous fever with no other symptoms. It was the weirdest fucking thing in the world. And I just attributed that my hands were in the fish's mouth and I didn't wash, and somehow I rubbed my eye, and next thing I have a weird fish fever. I don't know. That's what I was like. It must be that. Because who the hell gets a fever literally out of the nowhere with no other symptoms? No shortness of breath, no nothing. So I'm sleeping, and, this is all during COVID. So I was just in case, Boys sleep downstairs. Jess sleep downstairs. I'll sleep upstairs by myself. I'll quarantine myself from my little bubble for a couple days. No big deal. Get a COVID test, comes back negative. I have that night when I went to sleep, I had 103.7 fever with Tylenol. So I got up, went to pee, was kind of woozy when I stood up. So that's why I sat down. And next thing I remember is I was on the floor. I remember being on the toilet. I got really fucking sleepy, like head bob, like you're driving on the passenger seat of a car. And next thing I know, I wasn't on the floor. So I had fallen straight forward off the toilet. And remember how I laid when I was unconscious, unresponsive in the bathroom for your scenario? I was leaned over the tub with my head in the bottom of the tub and my legs on the floor.
Outside.
So I just like falling into tubs apparently.
Get rid of your tub.
So
Get some cushions.
Eventually, I wake up and I'm super fucking groggy. I realize where the hell I am. And I'm like, okay.
Damn, it happened again.
Well, no. So my brain had two things. It said,
COVID.
well, either you passed out again or you fell asleep. So I got up and I went back in bed. Didn't tell Jess. Didn't tell anybody. Like Jess was sleeping downstairs.
I really can't.
Jess is sleeping downstairs, doesn't hear any of this. I go back to sleep, fall asleep, wake up for breakfast the next morning. I wake up, take a shower, my fever's gone. I get a phone call, and it's the cardiologist's office. And they're like, "Hello, Mr. Turek. This is so-and-so, cardiologist tech for, so-and-so's doctor's office." And I'm like, "Yeah."
Hey.
Like, yeah, so you had a cardiac event last night. And I go,
oh shit.
Really?
I thought I was tired.
I was like, somehow I was somewhat expecting this phone call. And he's
Jess
like,
giving you the evil eyes at this point.
no, because she, again, still didn't know. She was still downstairs, hadn't checked on me yet. I'm still upstairs. I'm walking in the boys' room, my room, going, hi. And he's like, and I'm brushing it off, like, yeah, how bad was it? He goes, yeah, it was really bad. I'm like, what do you mean? So then he starts telling me. And he's like, so you had a beat, and then there was like nothing. And then you had a beat, then you had like nothing again. And it lasted 32 seconds.
Damn.
And I'm like, okay. I'll call my cardiologist. And at that point, I knew for a fact I had bought a pacemaker. Like, knew it right then and there. I was like,
damn it.
Fuck. Come downstairs, tell Jess the whole story. She whacks me upside the head and's like, you bought yourself a pacemaker. I'm like, yeah, I already knew that. Thank you. And so week goes by. I go to the cardiologist. They, show me the strip. And
I had it framed.
I wish I had. So it was on their computer. They didn't print it out. I wish they did. It was.
Go back and ask.
It was the most disgusting EMS, heart rhythm strip I had ever seen. I was brushing it off like, oh yeah, they're telling me it was significant. Whatever. Then I looked at it and was like, oh dear God, I was dead 3 times. Like, literally. I get, 6 seconds of asystole. That's technically dead.
32 is just
right
in the grave.
So literally my heart rate did actually drop while I was sitting on the toilet. It dropped from 72-ish to 60 and made all of these jumps. When it hit 20, it started recording. And that's how my loop caught all this. And what I didn't realize was as soon as it starts recording, it takes a minute prior and keeps that information. So that's how I knew I had gone all the way down. So it started recording at 20, sees these, pauses, these 6-second pause, junctional beat, 8-second pause, junctional beat, 6-second pause, 3 couplets of junctional beats, and then back into the sinus rhythm. 32 seconds long, and here I am today. When I talked to the cardiac specialist that was going to be doing the pacemaker, he initially was like, yeah, so I can understand, like, there's people that have significant vasovagal reactions, and there is a special patient population, and this is the one that he kind of clammed me in that if you vagal out and you stimulate your vagus nerve, you can drop into like the 40s or the 30s. But then there's a significantly small population that drops 20 and below, and they lose all of their cardiac output. And that's why when we were discussing pacemakers, he's like, I want you to have all the cardiac output that you can muster. So if you go and you're at 20, you're still maintaining cardiac output so you don't pass out and fall down the stairs, or while you're driving, or while you're working a cardiac arrest or something. So when I got the pacemaker and then they put in all of the different, parameters for my chip, I got mine set at a rate of 40. So it'll activate 39 and under instead of 20 and under, because he wanted to nix it before I lose perfusion.
Or you're dead.
Right. And he's like, if I can nix it early and get your blood, get your pressure to maintain, you're not going to pass out. I was like, cool. I didn't realize that in the first 2 months, my pacemaker went off 19 times. It activated itself 19 times, which tells me that I'm not vagaling, but that it's actually a cardiac conduction problem, that I am going bradycardic. My loop just never caught it.
It wasn't going slow enough.
Because it wasn't going slow enough. It's catching it at 40, but I'm wondering how many times I was sitting here in real life over a 15-year period that I had a heart rate of 32 and was like, oh, I feel kind of weird. Oh, okay, it's gone. Right?
Must have been in my head.
Must have been the Coke.
Right. And that's it. Like, oh, I drank too much Coke today. I feel kind of weird. So that's the real story behind that. But it really lends itself to have the conversation of when, and we're going to have the discussion about RMAs on the 15th, because I think it really needs to be said in that, should we even allow these people to RMA? A doc should have been called in at least and been like, yo, this guy is way worse than he's saying he is, or he thinks he is, I was talking to the paramedic that was working in the other truck, like 15 miles from here, that was going to come, but didn't call en route fast enough. And they were like, yeah, if I had gotten there and realized it was you, I would have just beat you and put you on the stretcher and you wouldn't have had no choice. Whereas the other medic was like a big pushover, and I could just be like, no, you're not taking me. Where's my paperwork to sign? But again, how many times do we take care of people that are in healthcare that are like me?
Doctors make the worst patients.
Providers.
No, medics, apparently.
Anybody.
Any healthcare people.
Any of us make the worst patients. So I think there's a lot to talk about in these kind of things. I think the main point is don't ever let that bias begin at dispatch. Oh yeah, they're fine. It's anxiety or something. So they were drunk, they passed out, whatever it might be.
I just had this conversation with one of our new EMTs and how it totally sets the stage, and how you can say that it's, XYZ, whatever, say anxiety. And because it came over as dispatch as that, you go, and by the time you're at the hospital, you call it in as anxiety and you give a report as anxiety. So you've set the stage from dispatch to the hospital to the nurse that's going to take care of this patient as anxiety. Well, what happens when that patient has a cardiac event?
Right.
But it's anxiety. Like, don't let the dispatch guide, or don't let anything guide take what you're seeing for what it's worth.
Just had that conversation in the last episode where the urgent care said it was COPD from the start. And luckily the providers were like, no, it's clearly not COPD.
Right.
We're thinking CHF. But if you get stuck in that crack,
hole.
Right.
It's hard to dig yourself out of it.
Yeah, it is.
Especially, if this had been a real situation, you're right. Medics and EMTs probably would have cracked my chest. And that would have sucked when I woke up. Now, granted, it's probably warranted. At least
32 seconds.
And that's it. At least
Would have been
pace
doing
the
the
shit
pushy
out of
pushy.
it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
And I think if I had started seeing, as a provider, looking at that, if that was a real situation, I'm going straight to the pads and pacing.
See, I like to think that I would be that quick, but I'd probably look at it and be like, what the fuck?
Me too.
And then I watch it and be like, oh shit, too late. Time to do pushy.
It's way too late for atropine.
Yeah.
Just throw the pads
God damn it.
You're going to need the pads anyway. That's why, like, I can watch and be like, that's not good. That's not good. That's
the wrong
really
way.
not
We're
good.
going the
Let me
wrong
grab
way.
these, like, slap. Okay. All right,
quick.
it's
He's
fixed.
quick.
Like, damn.
God damn.
Because I've done that where I've slapped pads on because I see bradycardia is coming, and then I never use them because magic, they're fixed.
Rather have it than not.
Me too. And it's like, at least they're there if I need them.
just in case.
Just in case. So that was the big main takeaway from the discussion that I wanted to have today. I wanted to tie in the pacemaker episode on YouTube solely because we don't really talk about pacemakers at all. And, I say in that video, for those that don't typically watch the YouTube videos, I literally spell out, like, here are ways to help people with pacemakers. Here are things that you guys can do as providers that gain you more information. Like, I have a pacemaker card on me at all times. Ask the patients if they do, if their wife does, if their significant other does, if it's in the house, just like you're asking for meds.
Yeah.
That little card tells you exactly the model number, the maker, everything about my device. It gives you a number to call. You can call and be like, hey, I'm with this person, this pacemaker.
Tell me what you see.
Not even tell me what you see. That's a different thing.
Well, tell
they
me
can't
what-
see it.
Yeah.
You can at least find out, is it on demand? Is it all the time? What are the settings for it, from the factory? If you go to their base station, so now everybody's thing is Bluetooth. So, like, mine uploads the information to my base station, which is in my room, and then it uploads it to the cardiologist cloud. And then they can see everything. When it's activated, for how long, what the circumstances
That's pretty
were.
cool.
It's pretty cool. Go to that base station, there's a phone number. Call that base station, you can get in touch with my cardiologist, or just ask the patients, like, what's your cardiologist number? Call up, be like, hey, I'm paramedic EMT so-and-so with this person. They have a base station. You should be able to see their cloud information. Download it really quick. Let me know what you see. They just had a syncopal episode.
That's a huge tool for a BLS provider if
Yeah.
they don't have a medic. That is a
Especially because
huge
we see
tool.
squiggly lines.
But even
You don't even see squiggly lines. You wouldn't even have the option to.
right, but even as an
True.
ALS provider, they walk in, I walk in going, hey, this patient, I'm told this patient just had a syncopal episode lasting 30 seconds to a minute and a half, whatever it might be. And now I can spend 3 extra minutes on a phone, send my EMT on the phone. I don't care. Send the wife on the phone. I don't care.
Whoever.
And pick up this information that literally tells me what happened in the past. This is information that I never would have had before. I know, oh, hey, that was a cardiac event that caused your syncopal episode, and here's what it was.
Right.
And now I have a better idea of how to treat you in the future.
Right.
Going to the it's a huge tool.
Oh,
no
yeah.
one knows about it. Because you know why? Never taught. Hence
We don't
why I
talk
wanted to
about
have this
pacemakers.
conversation.
Yeah.
So all of these things, make sure you watch the YouTube video. in conjunction with this, you'll learn a lot about pacemakers, how they function, and all that different kinds of stuff. Guys, do you have anything else to add?
I just want to give kudos to Jess because had I found out that you would have passed out since your heart didn't kill you, I probably would have.
Yeah, she deals with a lot.
You go, girl.
She deals with a lot. Anything for you, Kelsey? No?
All I got.
All right. Everyone, till next 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now? Yeah.
2 weeks.
On the 15th, we're going to be talking all about refusals of medical attention and having
Favorite.
a very interesting conversation about when we shouldn't and who shouldn't be doing them. So it'll be interesting. Till next time, stay safe.
Donuts. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you'd like more information on the podcast or to send us a call to review, visit medicmaterials.com/podcast. To learn more information, like us on Facebook at Medic Materials EDU, or watch our weekly instructional videos on the Medic Materials YouTube channel.